There's a funny thing about the poker table. Of the more than 100 million people in the world that are playing poker, less than 10% are women. That poker table has a force field, and that feels like a meeting room, a classroom, a boardroom, where we also don't see those women. What poker allows you to do is practice taking risk. We talk about it like exercise, getting your reps in. Women don't normally get that opportunity. I've been playing poker as a business person my whole life. I just didn't know it. There is going to be a market correction. The correction is that half of the participants are going to identify as female.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Libby Casey, senior news anchor here at The Washington Post, and I'm joined here at this table with this deck of cards by Jenny Just, co-founder of Peak Six Investments and co-founder with her daughter of Poker Power. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you so much.
Jenny's also one of the 23 self-made women billionaires in the United States, to give you a sense of her power and her perspective. I want to welcome you to the Global Women's Summit, and I can't wait to hear you talk about your insights on poker and leadership. But first, I want to poll the room. How many of you play poker?
A couple of hands.
Not
good.
How many of you are good at playing poker?
Of course. Yes, I saw one little
Okay,
leg over there.
I did not. Okay, for those of you who are watching online, we had some hands for playing poker. When we asked if you're good at it, there were a lot of these. Yeah. Jenny, does that make sense to you? Does that read in line with what you know?
Absolutely. Every week we are talking to women. We have a team that's out there talking to women, and that is the response. But it's also my response in 2019 until this whole thing started. So
yeah, I want to hear about that in a moment. But first, you weren't really part of the public sphere. You weren't very in the public limelight until only the last couple of years. And I understand that was intentional. Why?
So, interesting. I think for the most part, I would say I have 4 companies, I have 4 kids, I can't do anything else. So my co-founder would take on any outside role. I was the inside person. In reality, when I look back, was it a risk I wasn't willing to take? Maybe, probably. But I also knew as time went by that if I was going to be out there, because of the success I've had, I wanted to give something tangible back to the people who were going to listen. And I didn't have anything. So, until poker.
How did you discover poker?
So, it's a funny story. My husband was at a tennis match with my daughter. My daughter's now 18, but she was 14 at the time. And she's a very good athlete and wasn't winning. So, of course, he was a college athlete, frustrated, comes home and starts, in my face about what could have been happening differently, because he's not going to tell her, he's going to tell me. And I just rolled my eyes. And, but there was 2 important things he said. One was, she doesn't realize that she's playing against somebody, that she's not hitting against a wall or hitting with her teacher. And then the second thing he said was, she needs to learn to play poker. And who would have guessed that one moment would change everything? Now, at the time, I was like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. But like 2 weeks later, I was like, should I teach my 14-year-old daughter to play poker? Mm-hmm. And not only was it, I wasn't quite sure why I would do that, but I would never have said that about my sons. So we have 3 sons as well. And that really bothered me, because that should not be the case, whatever it is. And so we did an experiment. I asked her friends' moms, I said, let's do experiment, see if this is somehow beneficial. And there were 10 girls. The moms all wanted to join, 10 moms. And I will tell you, from lesson 1 to lesson 4, my new word, metamorphosis, that happened. Like, I would not be sitting here today if it wasn't that transformative. And what we saw in the girls was extraordinary confidence, like I had never seen. Like, you're literally 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and that 4th hour, in the beginning, they were whispering to each other about what to do. If somebody lost their chips, you can have my chips.
Right.
To the 4th lesson, sitting up tall, peeking at their cards, and nobody was going to take those chips. I'm like, that, just the physical demonstration was so powerful to me. I was like, what is going on here? There is something here. At the time, it wasn't about me being a public person or not being a public person. I'm just like, what just happened? We need more of that. That was fall, now at this point, fall of 2019. And so we started with, I think we had like 17 clubs, 3 states going into COVID.
And now?
Well, we died right after that because I thought the most important thing was being at the table.
Yeah.
As it turns out, that wasn't the whole story. So as we realized COVID was going to continue on, we figured out how to do Zoom and an app. And under Peak Six, the umbrella Peak Six, several companies, about 2,000 people, the women started to say, well, if it's, because we asked for their daughters and their nieces and their sisters, and they said, well, if it's so good for them, why aren't we learning? So we started to teach them. And then Morningstar, another large fintech company, said, can we learn? And 30, 60, 90 women international, opening Women's International Month. Fast forward to today, we are in 40 countries. We are on a mission to teach 1 million girls, women, this game. We are teaching at companies, which is really quite interesting. We just hit our 230th company. Think the biggest tech firms in the world, the banks, the biggest law firms, of course, all the large women's organizations, hoping, while they have really gravitated towards this idea of practicing strategy, practicing taking risks, better understanding capital allocation. Those bigger concepts, the young girls aren't going to get. But if they get it, they play, the girls see them playing, they start teaching, like your 7-year-old daughter has learned, right? It will come full circle for us. So
I just want to, what did your husband mean when he said that your daughter wasn't playing against a wall, she was playing against other players? Was it that, was the idea for poker that she could think about the odds, think about the strategy of the other person, sort of, you know, be able to pivot and
Yep.
read how they were playing?
So I talk about she brought something to the game. My daughter brought something to the game. As you start to play, you start to feel out what their strengths and weaknesses are. Now, based on that, what do I have to do? And by the way, that person might pivot. Another card might come out. Now, how are they playing? So we have to constantly rethink the strategy or our approach to the game while we're in the game. That's the beauty of poker.
So I confessed to Jenny before this, I did not know how to play poker as of a few months ago. I think I played once in high school and I just ate all the M&Ms, which were our chips, which was not a long-term strategy. But I had it as, it's on my bucket list. It's always been on my bucket list. And so once I learned about you and your company and the fact that we were talking, I had been doing my homework, and it was my 7-year-old daughter who started teaching me lessons because she has a card shark aunt who's been teaching her.
That's
and
amazing.
So, you know, I'm curious to see though, as she gets older, if that confidence that a really young child has change in the teenage years. And we can talk more about your daughter in a moment, but I want to talk about the numbers of women who actually play poker, because it's less than 10% of poker players that are women. 96% of professional poker players are men. And then when we take it into your world, your work world, options traders, it's, you know, single digits of option traders are women.
Yes.
How do you see those two as connected?
So ironically, so we have a lot of poker players. The firm I started 26 years ago,
Peak Six.
Peak Six, is an options trading firm initially. Since that time, it has grown into many other things. But we have many men and many poker players. And my thought about that was it was a complete waste of time, and I didn't want anything to do with it. We do tournaments every year, and we send somebody, you know, to the WSOP. That's how much it's ingrained in there. But as we start, we figured out after a few years, many fails, how to get more women in. We have more women actually allocating capital at Peak Six. I can fairly say for certain than any other trading firm in the United States. I don't know about the world. So we're in the low 30% women actually making the decision around money. So one thing we did 7 years ago, we started a program called the Women's Trading Experience. And I thought, we can't fail, because this was our third effort at trying to get women in. And one thing we did was stick poker in there, because our primary educator is an excellent poker player. And I just wanted the women to be learning something all day long, right? Just to be engaged and curious. Poker was kind of a filler. And it turns out that it wasn't a filler after all that time. I just didn't know it. Again, I didn't know what was happening. So the opportunity is, I love this when people, you know, kind of figure it out. It's like right under our nose. It's been there this whole time. It's super easy to pick up a deck of cards and play with some pretzels or some M&Ms. You don't, you know, a lot of men will like to say you have to play for money to really play. I mean, women, in regards to these specific things, I find we are way down the curve. We do not need to be playing for money to really understand the game, but we need reps.
I think it'd be safer if it wasn't M&Ms in my case, but yes, chips would isn't the poker,
Yeah.
chips would totally work.
Yeah.
Let's talk poker.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to talk through some poker hands, and you can talk to us about why they're significant and how you would play them. So let's start with hand one. Okay? Here we go. Here's our first hand. We've got
8-9 suited, and we call those suited connectors. Suited connectors. There we go. So two cards that are next to each other that are the same suit. Not obvious when you start to play poker. So when you start to play poker, you're given two cards, private hole cards, and everybody else is given theirs. They've kept them private too. Now you have to decide if you're going to play. The really interesting thing about a suited connector is most of you likely know that there's a whole bunch of hand rankings, and they go in sort of an order. High card is at the bottom, a royal flush is at the top. So having two cards next to each other could potentially get me a straight when the other 5 cards come out. But also having two of the same suit, I might have the opportunity for a flush. So I have 2 ways to win. I have a higher percentage chance of winning. And when we get these cards, you know, everybody's looking for a pair of aces, right, out of the gate. That's what they're really looking for. These are really opportunistic cards. Of course, aces win a high majority of the time. But suited connectors are also really interesting. But in work and in life, the way I like to think about this, it's like a plan A and a plan B wrapped up in a package all together. I literally use this example with a young woman. She's a senior, running a department for us, and we are putting a bunch of chips, a bunch of money, into a piece of technology that we're building. And it's adjacent to another piece of technology. And I said to her, so when we build this, it's going to take us time, and it's going to take us money. What if the customer ends up changing their mind? What if we cannot sell to the customer? How do I use all that time and energy on that tech and connect it to what I already have here? What is my plan B? And all of a sudden, she started to think about it differently, right? So I take a 360-degree view of my opportunity, and I don't forget to think about how I might lose or how I give myself an extra way to win. That's why I like suited connectors. So we talked about suited connectors. She's learning poker with us.
Let's talk about another hand.
Okay, great.
All right, here we've got an ace and a low card of a different suit.
Yep. These are tricky. These are tricky. This is where you think, and most of our women will be like, I want to play this right away. There's an ace. Of course I would want to have an ace. But an ace with a low card is not going to win that often. It's deceiving. It's potentially too good to be true. I like to think right now sort of since rates have been going up since April of last year, what were we thinking about our hand, our personal hand, our business hand? Were we really an ace-6 offsuit? Things were a little bit too good to be true. Valuations were a little bit too high. Everybody had enough cash, but all of a sudden they didn't when the Fed started raising rates and everybody started pulling back and valuations dropped 40 to 60%. So are we paying attention to those moments when I'm feeling super confident because I have an ace, but what is my second card, my kicker? You can think about these on a very bottoms-up level, or you can think about them on a top-down level. We play around with that at work a lot. So this has been a really interesting framework, not just for the women at Peak Six, but for the men and women and the senior leadership team to say, what cards do you think we have? And then when you get a little bit more advanced, you start to say, well, what position am I in at the table? Am I in the dealer position, right, the best seat? Or I'm in the cutoff position? Different positions have different strengths. And then, by the way, how many chips do I have? Because there's going to be a time when I play ace-6 offsuit.
I want to squeeze in one more
Great.
hand, but we have to make this kind of quick.
Okay.
I've got 2 kings.
We love them. We love them, nothing better. But do I win all the time? High percentage of the time, similar to aces. But I can lose. So what do I do when I have kings? I'm going to push in. I'm going to re-raise. I might 3-bet. Depends on the story at the table, depends on who I'm playing, depends on my chip stack and where I'm sitting. But I'm going to double down. And one of the interesting things, most interesting things we find, and we're teaching so many senior women, like this room would be, is how tentative they are when we say, okay, you're going to bet 3 times the big blind. They're like, wait, how about just a couple of chips? Every time. Every time. So you get the practice, the feeling of what it means to really, you don't have to push all the chips, but many more chips than you thought you naturally would.
I have to ask about gambling addiction and how you frame that and talk about that and think about that. Because, of course, there's a dark side to things like poker and gambling.
Yes. So first of all, we think about poker. It's a proven game of skill. It's a mind sport like chess. But, of course, it has all kinds of stereotypical and potentially negative consequences. So our goal is to, and what we've done as a trading firm for many years, and so, which is why I like our team talking about it, we're really good at healthy risk taking. And that's where we focus in our curriculum. So our curriculum is 12 lessons long, then there's an extra 6, and then private lessons that you can take virtually, or you can do in person. We do events all around the country. We're doing 8 to 10 of them a week. But that's where all the education comes in. And I'm really proud of our team for teaching healthy risk-taking. Of course, there's going to be things that go off the rails. I would expect that to happen. That is life. Some people will drive outside the speed limit to extremes. But our goal is to get you to the table, first of all, playing and confident at the table in a safe environment with other women in your community, networking, which is something we didn't expect from all of it, and then, of course, being able to take that back and use it in your daily and your work life.
Jenny, in one sentence, what's the biggest lesson you want women to take away from poker?
The most important thing between you and where you want to be is money. And this poker table is a representation of the money table. So you have the opportunity to practice getting comfortable in money and taking risks through this game.
Jenny Just, it went by so fast with Poker Power, Peak Six Investments. Thank you so much.
Thank you.